What if every flicker of awareness you've ever had, every thought, every spark of I am, isn't just happening inside your brain, but is actually the universe itself awakening through you? For centuries, people have tried to explain what consciousness really is. Science has made incredible progress in showing us how the brain works. We know about neurons firing, chemicals flowing, and electrical signals traveling. But here's the mystery. None of that explains why we actually feel something. Why do we experience life from the inside? Why does it feel like anything at all to be you? Think about it. A computer can process information at lightning speed, but it never knows what it's like to be a computer. A calculator solves math, but it doesn't feel proud of its answer. You, on the other hand, are not just processing. You're living, sensing, aware. That difference, that inner spark, is the puzzle we call consciousness. This is where things get astonishing. The British physicist Sir Roger Penrose, along with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, believe the key to this mystery doesn't lie in something big, but in something unimaginably small, so small it touches the very foundations of the universe itself. Deep inside your brain cells, hidden in delicate structures, they suggest consciousness is born in connection with the quantum fabric of reality. It's a bold idea, but if true, it means your awareness isn't just in your head, it may be woven into the universe itself. At its most basic, consciousness is simply the fact that you are aware. Right now, you're not just sitting in a room, breathing and existing. You actually know you are. You can feel the chair under you, notice the sound of your breath, and hear these words in your mind. That inner knowing is consciousness. It may sound obvious, but it's one of the deepest mysteries in science and philosophy. Consciousness isn't about being alive in a biological sense. A tree is alive, it grows, it responds to sunlight, it takes in water. But does a tree actually feel what it's like to be a tree? We don't know. What we do know is that in your case, life doesn't just run automatically. It feels like something from the inside. To get clearer, let's contrast this with machines. Computers can do incredible things. They can beat the best chess players in the world, solve equations faster than we ever could, and even mimic human conversation. But here's the difference. A computer doesn't actually experience what it's doing. When a calculator gives you 2 + 2 = 4, it doesn't feel the answer. It doesn't celebrate getting it right. It just runs a program. That's where the puzzle begins. Because you, unlike the calculator, don't just process information. You feel joy, pain, curiosity, even love. You know what it's like to taste your favorite food or hear a piece of music that moves you. This what it's like quality is sometimes called subjective experience, and it's the heart of consciousness. Philosophers often refer to this as the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems, though they're not truly easy, are things like, how do neurons communicate? How do we remember names? How do we process colors and sounds? Science has mapped a lot of that out, but the hard problem is, why do any of these processes come with a felt inner world at all? Why isn't the brain just a dark, silent machine processing signals with no awareness attached? Here's another way to think about it. Imagine building a robot that can see. You give it a camera for eyes, sensors for touch, and circuits for processing. It can report that the sky is blue, it can avoid obstacles, and it can describe the world around it. But does the robot actually see the blue sky the way you do? Does it experience blueness? Probably not. That gap between processing and experiencing is exactly where the mystery lies. This is why Penrose and Hameroff's ideas stand out. They're not just asking how the brain works like a computer, they're asking why it feels like something to have a brain at all. Their theory suggests consciousness isn't an illusion or a byproduct of complicated wiring. Instead, it might be something much more fundamental, something that connects the inner spark of awareness to the very structure of the universe. So, if consciousness isn't just about raw information processing, the question becomes, where in the brain could something deeper be happening? We know that the brain is made of billions of neurons. These neurons are like the body's communication system. They send electrical signals back and forth, passing messages that let you think, move, feel, and remember. For decades, scientists believed neurons and their connections, called synapses, were the main players in producing consciousness. If you just mapped enough of them, the thinking went, you'd eventually crack the code of awareness. But Penrose and Hameroff weren't convinced that neurons alone could explain it. So instead of stopping at the level of neurons, they asked, what's happening inside them? When you zoom in past the outer membrane of a neuron, you find tiny, intricate structures called microtubules. At first glance, they look like hollow tubes arranged in patterns, almost like scaffolding that holds the cell's shape. For years, that's all most scientists thought they were, just support beams, the skeleton of the cell. Hameroff, who worked as an anesthesiologist, began to see them differently. He noticed that anesthetics, the drugs that put people into unconscious states, seemed to act not on the outer parts of neurons, but on these microtubules. That suggested microtubules might have something to do with the very presence of consciousness itself. To make this easier to picture, imagine your neurons as musical instruments. On the surface, they're impressive enough, a guitar, a violin, a piano. But inside each one are delicate strings, subtle components that truly give the instrument its voice. Microtubules are like those hidden strings. They're not just structural supports, they may be tuned to something far more mysterious. Here's where the intrigue deepens. Microtubules are incredibly small, so small that they exist at the boundary where classical physics, the world of everyday cause and effect, meets quantum physics, the world of probabilities and strange superpositions. That's exactly the kind of environment Penrose believed could host the building blocks of awareness. Think about how surprising that is. We tend to imagine our thoughts and feelings as the result of large-scale brain activity, waves of neurons firing together in synchrony. But Penrose and Hameroff suggest the real action may be happening at a scale so tiny it brushes against the deepest fabric of reality itself. It's a bit like discovering that the music of an orchestra doesn't just come from the players you can see, but from hidden vibrations deep inside each instrument, carrying harmonies from a place we never thought to look. So, if microtubules are more than scaffolding, what exactly could they be doing? That's where quantum reality comes into the story, and it changes everything we thought we knew about how awareness might arise. Quantum physics describes how reality behaves at the tiniest scales, the level of atoms, electrons, and particles far smaller than we can see. And down here, the rules are completely different from the everyday world. In our normal experience, things are solid and predictable. A chair is either here or there. A coin is either heads or tails. But in the quantum world, particles don't sit neatly in one place. Instead, they exist in what's called a superposition, a state of many possibilities at once. Imagine tossing a coin into the air, and instead of it being heads or tails while it spins, it's actually both heads and tails at the same time. Only when the coin lands, when it's observed or measured, does it collapse into one definite outcome. That's what happens in the quantum world. Particles live in clouds of probability until something forces them to settle into a single reality. This shift is called the collapse of the wave function. Now, here's where Roger Penrose brought in a groundbreaking idea. Most physicists thought these collapses were random, happening only when an observer looked at the system. But Penrose disagreed. He argued that collapses happen naturally, built into the very structure of reality itself. He called this process objective reduction, meaning the universe itself decides when the possibilities shrink down into a single outcome. This is the astonishing part. Penrose suggested that each collapse isn't just a physical event, it's also tied to a spark of conscious experience. In other words, every time quantum possibilities collapse into a single reality, that click might feel like a moment of awareness. If that sounds abstract, think of it like this. Your stream of consciousness, this ongoing movie of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, may be made up of countless tiny quantum flashes. Each collapse is like a frame in a film reel. Alone, each frame is small and fleeting. But put them together, and you get the continuous story of your awareness. So how do microtubules fit into all this? Penrose and Hameroff propose that microtubules are the stage where these quantum superpositions and collapses are happening inside the brain. In other words, these tiny structures might be orchestrating quantum events that give rise to your moment-to-moment awareness. This is not how most scientists traditionally think about the brain. But if they're right, it means consciousness is not just neurons firing or signals bouncing around. It's the result of quantum reality itself, flickering into being inside the hidden structures of your brain. Up to this point, we've seen two things: microtubules as the hidden structures inside your neurons, and quantum reality as a place where possibilities flicker before collapsing into a single outcome. But how do these ideas connect? That's where Penrose and Hameroff's joint model comes in. It's called Orchestrated Objective Reduction, or ORCH-OR for short. Let's break it down step by step. First, inside your microtubules, quantum superpositions are believed to form. That means within these tiny structures, particles don't exist in one single state. They exist in multiple possibilities at once, just like the spinning coin that's both heads and tails. Second, these superpositions don't last forever. According to Penrose, they eventually collapse, not randomly, but as part of the natural laws of the universe. This is the objective reduction part of the theory. It's like the moment the spinning coin lands and reality makes a choice. Third, the brain doesn't just let these collapses happen randomly. Instead, Hameroff suggests the microtubules are able to orchestrate them. In other words, your brain can time and pattern these collapses in a way that creates order rather than chaos. And here's the key point. Each collapse, each reduction, corresponds to a spark of awareness. Think of it as a single frame in the movie of your consciousness. By itself, a frame is tiny and fleeting. But billions of them, happening every second, create the smooth, flowing experience of being aware, the stream of thoughts, sensations, and feelings that you call you. An analogy makes this clearer. Imagine watching an old film reel. The film isn't one long continuous image. It's made of countless still frames flashing quickly across the projector. Your mind blends them together into the movie. ORCH-OR suggests something very similar. Your consciousness is a movie composed of countless tiny quantum collapses happening inside your brain's microtubules. And because this happens billions of times per second, you don't notice the individual clicks. Instead, you experience a seamless flow of awareness. This is why ORCH-OR feels so revolutionary. It doesn't treat consciousness as an accidental byproduct of brain wiring. Instead, it proposes that awareness arises from the deepest laws of physics, from quantum processes built into the very fabric of reality. Now you might wonder, if these collapses are happening inside your brain, what exactly are they collapsing into? Where does this spark of awareness ultimately come from? That's the next layer of the theory, and it opens the door to a profound idea: that consciousness might not be produced in your head at all, but channeled from the universe itself. Physicists call it the quantum field. Think of it as an invisible ocean of possibilities that underlies everything in existence. Every particle, every atom, every star and galaxy, and yes, even every thought emerges from this ocean. It's not something far away. It's the fabric of reality itself. Now, here's where the ORCH-OR theory takes on a breathtaking dimension. If your microtubules are orchestrating collapses of quantum states, then your consciousness is directly interacting with this universal field. In other words, your awareness isn't sealed off inside your skull. It may actually be tuned to the same field that creates the cosmos. A simple analogy can help. Imagine your brain as a radio. The microtubules are the tuning dials, fine-tuning frequencies. And consciousness is the music that plays. The music doesn't live inside the radio. It comes from the airwaves, invisible and everywhere, waiting to be tuned into. In the same way, awareness may not be something your brain creates, but something it receives and organizes. If that's true, then consciousness is not limited to neurons firing. It's a universal phenomenon woven into the very structure of reality. Your brain acts like a receiver, a resonator, drawing awareness from the quantum field and shaping it into the personal living experience you know as you. This is a radical shift from the way most of us are taught to think about the mind. In the traditional view, consciousness is locked in the skull, generated entirely by brain activity. But in Penrose and Hameroff's vision, awareness is more like a bridge, a point where the universal field flows into human experience. It's not just poetic. It would mean that your inner life is directly connected to the same underlying field that governs galaxies, stars, and matter itself. Every moment you open your eyes, listen to a song, or have a thought, you are literally participating in the universe's deepest fabric. It's a humbling and empowering thought. Awareness isn't a small accident of biology. It may be the universe expressing itself through you. But if that's the case, then what does it say about who we really are? If our consciousness is tied into the universal field, it changes the way we think about life, death, creativity, and even spirituality. And that's where we're headed next. First, it means you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself through your eyes, your thoughts, your feelings. This challenges the everyday illusion that we are isolated individuals locked in our own private worlds. Instead, your consciousness may be part of a larger field, like a wave rising from the ocean. You are unique, yes, but you are also inseparable from the whole. Second, if consciousness is connected to the quantum field, then it may not simply vanish when the body stops working. Just as a wave settles back into the ocean, your awareness could return to the field it came from. That doesn't mean you continue as the exact same self, but it suggests that the essence of your awareness may not be lost. For many, this idea feels deeply comforting, the possibility that consciousness is not strictly bound by birth and death, but is part of something continuous. Third, this view sheds light on those moments we often call mystical or creative. Have you ever had a sudden burst of inspiration, a solution that appeared out of nowhere, or a feeling of connection so deep it seemed beyond words? In the OR framework, experiences like these could be glimpses of the universal field flowing more directly through you. Creativity, intuition, and even states of transcendence may be expressions of the field working in harmony with your brain's microtubules. It's important to note, Penrose himself is cautious. He does not claim all these spiritual extensions outright. His focus is on the physics. But once you open the door to the idea that consciousness arises from the quantum field, it's natural for people to see bridges into philosophy, spirituality, and the very meaning of life. And perhaps that's the real gift of this theory. It invites us to think bigger about who we are. Consciousness is not reduced to neurons firing blindly. It is not dismissed as an illusion. Instead, it is honored as something fundamental, something that may tie us to the stars, the galaxies, and the creative unfolding of the universe itself. So the next time you pause to notice that simple, undeniable fact, I am aware, you might also sense that you are touching something vast, ancient, and universal. Awareness is not small. Awareness is the universe, awake within you. We began with a simple but profound question. Where does your awareness come from? For centuries, science has mapped the mechanics of the brain, yet the mystery of why life feels like something has remained unsolved. Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff dared to look deeper. They suggested that consciousness is not an accident of neurons, but a quantum phenomenon taking place in the brain's hidden structures. Within the microtubules, they believe tiny quantum events unfold. These collapses, orchestrated, patterned, and constant, are not just physical processes. They are the sparks of awareness itself. Billions of these quantum clicks each second become the flowing movie of your inner life. And because these collapses connect directly to the quantum field, the invisible ocean of possibilities that underlies reality, your awareness may be more than biological. It may be a bridge between your brain and the very fabric of the universe. If that's true, then consciousness is not trapped inside your skull. It is woven into the cosmos. Every time you open your eyes, the universe itself is waking up through you. This perspective changes everything. It suggests that you are not separate from the world around you. You are the world, alive and aware of itself. It hints that when the body ends, awareness may return to the universal field, like a wave folding back into the ocean. And it offers a new way to understand creativity, intuition, and those moments of deep connection, as glimpses of the field shining through. Whether or not science fully confirms OR, the invitation remains. Reflect on this. What does it mean to you to think that your consciousness may be linked to the same quantum field that forms galaxies and stars? Perhaps awareness itself is the universe's greatest mystery and its most beautiful gift.